So although this car is ready for animation, we may want to go in there and animate it a different way, get those wheels to auto rotate, or you may have an environment that dictates where the car is actually going to drive to, in which case you don't really want an animator going in there and having to animate that car. You want to make it a little bit easier for them. So one way we can do that is just put it on a path and make that car follow the path. So the first thing I need to do is just grab that last file, go to my display panel, and turn back on the helpers so that we can actually see them, like the one underneath the root, for instance. And we're going to use a few locators or point helpers and stuff just to make the car follow along on a path. So let's take a look at what we can do. We can come in here, go to the create panel, go down to shapes and the line tool, drop into a top viewport by pressing T. And I'm just gonna press S and turn on my grid snapping. Right click the snaps toggle just to make sure that grid is actually selected. And I'm just gonna draw from back outside of the car here, and I'm gonna draw one down here. And then I'm just going to turn off my grid snapping. I don't really need that. And I'm just going to draw a random path. You might have a path that you need this car to follow, but I don't. So I'm going to draw a random path just to see, just to demonstrate, you can do anything with this. So let's make this a bit crazy. Car can drive over here and come around to a stop right about there. So with the path in place, I'm just going to right click and end the tool. Back in my perspective viewport by pressing P, I can just move this path up above the car a little bit. The car doesn't need to follow it directly. And I need to just zoom in a little bit and create another point helper that's going to be path constraint to this path that we just created. So with that done, let's go to the create panel, the create tab, hit the helpers button, down to point, and just click in the scene. Maybe a size of 35 for this as just a box. And I'm gonna just do animation constraints, path constraint up to the path we just created. And you can see that it automatically has animation on it from 0 to 100 frames. We can scrub this through, and that's gonna go all the way along that path, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we need. And that's the first part of what we're actually going to be doing. So to mess this hierarchy up that we've got a little bit just on the car, we can do a select and link to the point that we just created. So from the root up to the point. And the reason that I'm using the root rather than the controller is that the controller we can still animate on top of this, and we still could, but it just means that there's another layer in there, or another stage in the hierarchy, so that if something goes wrong we know where to remove it from. We're not actually affecting the animator's controllers in any way. And with that done, let's just scrub through that animation, and you can see the car is coming along. It's not really following along perfectly, so we need to change that right now. So put it back to frame 0, and let's grab this guy, and let's just scroll down in its motion panel. Just scroll all the way down, and you've got follow. So let's turn on follow. Let's see what happens. So our car, for instance, has now flipped around crazy over here, and when we start scrubbing it, you can see that the car is actually turning this time though. So that's great, but it's not what we want. The car needs to still be in that same position. So let's turn off the follow. Let's unlink this guy, the root, again. So I'm just going to click unlink. And then I'm going to come back up to this point and turn the follow on with it unlinked. Excellent. Alright, with that done, I can now select and link this root back up to the point helper. And it won't flip, and it hopefully should be driving along just fine. So it should follow along with this line that we have. So let's just do that. And you can see the car is following along, which is great. Perfect. All the way back to frame 0. Alright. So one of the things that is happening is, this car is actually further ahead than this point is actually placed, which isn't the best deal for it. We really need this point to be somewhere around the back wheels just to push it forward. So with that said, let's just move the root point back over a little bit. Let's jump to a left viewport, and move this along. I'm just going to eyeball this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It helps if it is, but in this case it doesn't really matter too much. Okay, that's awesome. Back to your perspective viewport, and that should be the main setup done for the path constraint, and that's going along just fine. So we don't have to worry about anything for the moment except that's moving along on the path. The next thing we need to do is, right now when it comes to a corner for instance, the car wheels don't turn at all, so we need to really sort that out in the next video.